Well, hello. Today we're going to work on the next row in our watercolor stripes. And I want to work on this section right here that was rows of ultramarine, but we're going to let the paint itself be the guide. So in these spaces where there are blooms, where it's lighter, that's where we're going to draw. And all of these darker spaces, we're just going to leave them as if they were a string, and this is a space, these darker spaces I will not tangle in. I still want the watercolor itself to sort of be the star of the show here, so I definitely want the watercolor itself to guide the drawing. So what I was thinking for this space right here is Tripoli. So let's get it started. And I'm not quite sure how I want to draw my triangles for Tripoli, but I figured it would just come to me as I drew. So I'm going to go ahead and just start right towards the middle and then let it grow out as I go. So I guess I'm doing some rounded triangles. And I'll just skip this area where it's a little bit darker. The hard part is to decide, where's that darker space? Like here it's just a little bit darker, whereas here it's just much darker. So figuring out like where exactly do I want to stop. But that's all the decisions you get to make as the artist. And as you can see, I'm stopping, leaving the white, a completely white space, not drawing past the actual watercolor itself. Again, that's a decision that you get to make as the artist. You can choose to go ahead and draw on the white space if that's what you want for this artwork. There we go. And I think I could maybe sneak at least the border of a new triangle in right there. And maybe pretend like there's some more over here. Doing a lot of imagination when you get to the borders. Okay. So that one's a little large and wonky for a typical Tripoli. But there's nothing wrong with that. So again, this one's going to sort of end over here. And maybe this one, like that's the tip to that one over there, which means there'd be a tip here. So if I kept drawing this, it would go into the blue section here, or the green section. I'm going to stop it right where I think the pink sort of stops. And then this one would be quite odd. But there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. What would happen right here if I put a triangle? It would have to, there we go. Not bad. Kind of closing up that space there. So admittedly, these are the wonkiest Tripoli I've ever drawn, but that's totally okay. And that one's just going to disappear into the dark space there. there's so much of it just disappearing into the dark space that I'm not getting like the full shapes that I would typically get in Tripoli. However, these are a little bit large, but there's, like I said, like I keep saying, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how it's turning out this time. So I guess we're going into this section here. So this is a little bit odd. I'll have to do some imagining here. So I'll aura this one, and then aura that one, and then I'll come down here, and this will be like where my third section would be. Finally, a full triangle-ish shape. This is, again, the dark is just coming right on in there, so I'll just let it make pretend right on it. There we go. Now what do I want to do here? Do I want to put a little guy in there or just leave it? I don't know. Apparently I don't want to make that decision right now. What I want to do is draw a partial triangle over here. And these sort of look like corn kernels this time. That's a big one. All right. So these two would kind of bunk, except for there's this border here, so it almost makes it look like the pattern is overlapping itself. And then what about here past this border? Should I put some more Tripoli over here? I don't think so. I think I'm going to put something else right in this section, a very, very light pink. Same on this side over here. Okay. Glad I made that decision. All right. So let's see. There would be a little section here. And admittedly, I'm not following Tripoli because I think this space is just a little odd. I'm not following Tripoli as religiously as I would. Like normally I would just aura the side of this to create the side of this, but here you can tell I started a little earlier and went a bit further down. So I'm sort of modifying the way I would typically draw Tripoli to suit this paper and the watercolor pattern here. So like here I'm just auraing that one side. You can see they're about the same length, whereas here I was just sort of going with the flow. I would normally I want to try to put something there, but nope. So I might just start a whole new set of the pattern over here. Maybe just, this is a bit dark, so I'm going to leave that, but make pretend there's an aura there. Make pretend there. That would be too far for that one to get all the way past the dark space. But this one I could do. There's that. So a lot, like I said earlier, a lot of imagining where things might be. But don't worry, because the eye will fill in the rest. As long as you give it just a hint of what you want it to think, eye sort of goes with it. So there's our really wonky Tripoli. Oh goodness. And let's see. I don't know how I feel. Let's see. Let's go with some shading. And what I'm going to do is choose a side and just put a hint of graphite along that side for each of my triangle-ish shapes, and later I'll put some graphite all along that edge. But for now, the other thing we could do is put a little bit of graphite all the way around the edge of what we're calling, these darker spaces. I don't know if I like that. We'll just do this bigger one and see if I like it, and if I don't, we won't do the others. So I think one person was asking about, where did you learn to shade? And it's just been years of practicing and sort of letting go of the stress of it. Like, if I don't like how this border is, guess what? This is pencil and I can erase it, or I can get over it and just sort of leave it how it is and move on. Like, it's just pencil, it's just graphite, I'm fine. So I'm willing to experiment and try things out, and if I don't like it, well, great. Now I've learned something new for the next time I decide to do something similar to this. I will say one thing that I've learned over the years is graphite, I can sort of treat it like salt in a recipe, where I initially add just a little and taste test to see if I want to add more and more and more. But once you add so much, and everything sort of becomes like a muddied gray shade, at that point, that's when you've got to pull out the eraser or do something sort of a little bit more drastic. So I try not to add too much at the very beginning. I can always add more and layer it and make it darker and darker, which I might do, for example, along this border. It looks kind of nice the way it is, but once I get all the other shading in there, it makes me wonder. Okay, let's see about shading around the purple. Does it really make it look like the Tripoli? Oh, I forgot to do that section. Does it really make it look like the Tripoli is going behind or under it if I add shading around the purple edge? Let's test it out. So far, I feel like it does help it look as if the Tripoli is like behind this purple shape, but I'll have to take a look at it once it's all shaded. Let's see, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know. We'll have to keep going and see how we feel about it. I might want to add some shading there. Maybe, maybe not. Or like shading right there, but it sort of does it itself because it's darker along that border. The colors are a bit more saturated there. And at this point, the shading does look kind of not beautiful. But I've just learned to trust that, like, when I'm done with the whole shading and highlighting process, that I'll have something I might like. And again, I can modify it if I want. Let's smooth these out a little bit more. And then take my white charcoal, and on the opposite side to wherever I added the graphite, put just a little curve or line of the white charcoal. You can see I use the white charcoal a lot. My little pencil is tiny. I have a ton of these like itsy bitsy white charcoal pencil stubs because I love highlighting. And the funny thing is, once you blend it in with the tortillon, it really is just a hint of a highlight. Like the real oomph comes when you add like a white bit with, say, a Posca pen or a Uniball pen or a Jelly Roll pen. But it sort of sets the tone. It sort of gives the eye a hint. There's a bit of highlighting there, a bit of light area. Okay. When I first started adding highlighting, I didn't like this stage of blending it in with the tortillon. I liked seeing the white streaks. And I felt like, well, you're just sort of smudging it all out. You can barely tell it's there. And then I realized if I don't blend this in completely or well enough, some of the pens that make white marks, like I was saying, the Jelly Roll, won't mark over areas you haven't blended in because it'll get gummed up by the dust of the white charcoal. So I learned, well, gosh, I really do have to go ahead and blend this in fairly well so that the other white marks I'm going to make that are more distinct will work well. So yes, this is just sort of adding that area that's just a little bit highlighted. It's just a hint of whiteness, but I think it's fairly effective, especially when you have the darker areas that we shaded in. Just a little hint right there. Oh, and I don't know if I did these. Let's do again. Okay. And I don't know about the decision to put graphite around the area here. I'm still not terribly sold on that, and it makes me wonder, like, would I like it more if I added more, if it were more of a shadow, or if it's one of those, like, I just need to let it go moments. So let's test it out. Like I said, it's just graphite. What you gonna do? All right. So I'm adding just a little bit more. It's a much tighter, darker line. I am using like little circular motions to put the graphite on because I don't want to be like digging into the paper. But I definitely want it to be this distinct area of like a shadow is being cast by this darker area, and all the Tripoli are behind it or under it. This area is sort of nice and dark all on its own. There we go. Let's see what happens when I blend that out. Do I like it? Do I not like it? So with this, I'm blending it out so that the shadow extends into Tripoli. I'm not really touching the side of the graphite that's touching the darker area. I don't think I like that. I think I liked it better before. So it was a good thing to test out, but I don't think it's for me. So, unlike many Zentangle artists who say, no, 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 not an eraser, I say, it's my artwork, and it was an experiment, and I didn't like it. And so, I'm using all the tools at my command, one of which is an eraser. So, we learned something today. I do not like shading on the outside of these shapes. I will know that for the next time I do an artwork like this. And I love doing these striped Zentangle artworks, so it's a good thing to learn for me. Alright. I mean, it's already a Zentangle inspired artwork. I'm already adding things that aren't typical Zentangle, like the watercolor itself. So, all right, let me blow this off. Voila! We're back to where we were. Now, I do, however, want to touch up some of the areas that I did want shaded and highlighted. So anywhere where I feel like I might have erased some graphite that I did intend to be there, I'll just touch those up. And highlighting. Maybe a little bit more highlight on that one too. This one here. Yeah. Maybe a little bit right up here. So those sounds. I just moved to Washington, D.C., and I live right near the trains at Union Station. So from time to time, meaning every few minutes, I get to hear trains passing by. Normally it's not so loud, but I have my windows open, and so I can hear them a little bit more distinctly. Alright, so I'm going to add just a little shine mark. Sometimes it'll be a line or a curve. Sometimes it'll be a line with a dot. I just sort of try to alternate it so it doesn't look like it's completely consistent and uniform all the way around. Let's put a little bit, a little there, tiny bit, okay. To me, it's these white lines that really make it, but the highlighting with the white charcoal, for example, sort of sets the stage for these lines. If I just put these lines in by themselves, it'd still look pretty interesting. But I think adding in the highlights and shadows, mix it a bit more. Oh. A bit more, I don't know, what's the word? Realistic? It's totally not a realistic artwork, so I don't know about that, but... Alright, maybe one right here with a dot. I want a dot there. Okay. Anything over here, just little bits, little highlights. Now I think what I want to do with this area here on the side, where it's just light pink, and the darker border, I'm going to put Posca dots. I think it's so fun that the brand is called Posca, and I often make polka dots, so I call these Posca dots. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's ever thought about that, but I get quite a giggle. I think it just adds just a little bit of interest, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing down here. And it sort of highlights this interesting shape that the watercolor made. So again, finding that balance between adding Zentangle and then letting the watercolor itself sort of shine out. So I'm taking a look. I feel like we're about the place where we're done with this, but I'm just looking over to see, is there anything else I want to add? Let's take a look maybe from different angles. Oh, that is, I like it. I know I want to add one section that's just, there's a few sections I want to add that are just going to be subtle, and they're not going to be actual Zentangle patterns. Again, this is to make sure that the Zentangles don't completely take over the entire artwork, that the watercolor itself can start shining through. So I was thinking about with this, I think this was Amazonite Genuine. I was thinking of just adding Posca dots in this section or in these blooms right here. That way it's like two patterns and then there's like a break for the eye. But if whichever one I decide to add Posca dots, there's going to be sort of a different pattern in the other section. So I don't know how I'm feeling about that. Right now I think we could add Posca dots on the bloom. I think I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then we'll work on what are we going to do with the Amazonite Genuine on another time. So any of these spots where it's lighter because of the water that we added to create blooms, I'm just going to add Posca dots. They're very subtle, and it's in a lighter section, which I like. So you really don't necessarily notice them unless you're a little closer to the actual artwork. So it makes me feel as if it's adding interest rather than detracting from the art of the watercolor. If I do a pattern in the Amazonite Genuine, and I might just leave it and let it be just a color, a little bit of space that's not drawn on for the eye to rest and enjoy that beautiful color. And then just do two more Zentangles here. I'll have to ponder it. right. So that's where we are for today. Thank you so much for joining me today and drawing some wonky Tripoli and some Posca dots. I hope to see you again on another day. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.